Welcome to The Story of Us by Skoob, where we explore the fascinating stories hidden within one of humanity's most enduring symbols, the wedding ring. I'm your host, Madison Reed, and today we're embarking on a journey that spans millennia, crosses continents, and reveals the extraordinary evolution of these simple bands that carry such profound meaning. Think about it for a moment. Right now, millions of people around the world are wearing a small circle of metal on their fourth finger. But have you ever wondered why? Why that specific finger? Why a circle? And how did this tradition survive thousands of years of human history, wars, cultural shifts, and social revolutions? Let's begin our story in the ancient world, where the concept of eternal love first took physical form. Picture yourself in ancient Egypt, where the desert sands have witnessed the rise and fall of pharaohs, and where scribes first began recording the mysteries of human devotion. The Egyptians understood something profound about circles. They have no beginning and no end. This wasn't just geometry to them, it was philosophy, spirituality, metaphysics. The circular shape became their hieroglyph of eternity, representing the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth that governed their entire worldview. But here's where it gets fascinating. Early Egyptian couples didn't just exchange rings. They had a beautiful tradition of taking a piece of precious metal, often gold or silver, and literally breaking it into two halves. Each partner would keep one piece as a shared emblem of their bond. Imagine the symbolism. Two people, each carrying half of something that was once whole, representing how they completed each other. The circle, they believed, mirrored the eternal cycle of existence. When you placed a ring on your beloved's finger, you weren't just giving them jewelry, you were binding them to the cosmic order of the universe itself. This wasn't just romance. This was sacred geometry made manifest in love. Now, let's address one of history's most persistent mysteries. Why the fourth finger of the left hand? This isn't arbitrary, my friends. This tradition reaches back thousands of years and involves a fascinating blend of anatomy, astrology, and ancient medical beliefs. The Romans and Greeks had a beautiful explanation for this custom. The great writer Macrobius, writing in the 5th century AD, recorded two reasons that the ancients used this particular finger. First, the practical reason. It's the finger least used of all 10, and the least capable of individual movement. Therefore, it was considered the safest place to wear precious jewels. But here's where it gets romantic and mystical. Ancient physicians and lovers alike believed that a special artery ran directly from the fourth finger of the left hand straight to the heart. They called it the vena amoris, the vein of love. Now, we know today that this is anatomically incorrect, but isn't there something beautiful about the poetry of this belief? The 16th century German humanist Levinus Lemnius recorded something even more intriguing. He wrote that ancient physicians, from whom this finger derives its name of physic finger, used to mix their medicaments and potions with it. They believed that no poison could adhere even to its extreme tip without communicating itself directly to the heart. Think about this for a moment. Our ancestors saw the fourth finger as a direct line to our emotional and spiritual center. Every time you touch your wedding ring, according to ancient belief, you're literally touching your heart. But wait, there's an astrological dimension that will blow your mind. In late classical tradition, different fingers were assigned to different planetary influences. The fourth finger belonged to Apollo, the sun god and healer, who ruled the heart as the seat of enduring love. So when couples exchanged gold rings, gold being Apollo's sacred metal, they were invoking divine protection over their love, connecting their earthly union to cosmic forces. Let's travel now to ancient Rome, where rings carried meanings far beyond love and marriage. This is where our story takes a darker, more complex turn. Because Roman rings weren't just symbols of affection. They were markers of power, status, and sometimes deadly instruments of political intrigue. In Roman society, your ring immediately identified your place in the social hierarchy. Gold rings were the exclusive privilege of senators, magistrates, and the elite. The general population was limited to silver, brass, or iron. And slaves? They were forbidden from wearing rings altogether, until the moment of their manumission, when receiving a ring became a powerful symbol of their newfound freedom and citizenship. But here's where Roman ring culture becomes absolutely fascinating and terrifying. Some Roman rings were crafted with hollow bezels or secret compartments designed to hold poison. Yes, you heard that right. Poison rings. Historical accounts suggest that figures like Hannibal and later Pope Alexander VI allegedly used such rings to discreetly eliminate rivals. Imagine the psychological complexity of this. The same object that symbolized honor, love, and authority could also be an instrument of death. Roman rings embodied a fascinating duality. They were markers of prestige and identity, tools of administration, and potentially lethal weapons, all wrapped into one small piece of jewelry. The Romans also gave us one of the most beautiful ring designs in history, the fide ring, depicting two clasped hands. This wasn't just artistic expression, it was a visual metaphor for unity, loyalty, and mutual trust. When Roman couples exchanged fed rings, they were publicly declaring not just their emotional devotion, but also the legal validity of their marriage contract within their community. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire and beyond, something remarkable happened to the wedding ring tradition. The early Christian church didn't abandon this pagan custom. Instead, they transformed it, infused it with new meaning, and made it central to the sacred ritual of marriage. Initially, Christian marriage rings were accompanied by other tokens of spousage, gold, silver, or money, presented by the man to the woman. Ancient manuals, like the Sarum Manual, instructed ministers to ask for these tokens before proceeding with the ceremony. This wasn't just ceremony. It connected to an ancient practice where a man would essentially purchase a bride or fulfill conditions accepted by her family. But the ring held special significance as a seal. In ancient times, rings were used to secure orders and valuables, symbolizing friendship and trust. When a man gave a ring to his wife, he was demonstrating her acceptance into his highest trust, making her a partner in managing household affairs and protecting valuables. The Christian interpretation added profound spiritual dimensions. The circular shape, already recognized as a symbol of eternity, now represented the enduring nature of conjugal love and lifelong commitment ordained by God. The ring became more than a material object. It represented a spiritual and emotional pledge between husband and wife, blessed by divine authority. Some early Christian rings even functioned as practical signets. In Roman households, where locks and keys were uncommon, a wife could wear a facsimile of her husband's signet ring, allowing her to manage household affairs and make decisions in his absence. This represented both equality and responsibility within Christian domestic life. As we move into the medieval period, wedding ring traditions became even more elaborate and symbolic. This era gave us some of the most creative and meaningful ring designs in human history, innovations that reflected the complex spiritual and social landscape of medieval Europe. During the Middle Ages, rings became essential elements of wedding customs, particularly in England, where exchanging rings validated verbal marriage vows with both legal and social weight. But medieval craftsmen weren't content with simple bands. They created what we now call puzzle rings, or gimel rings, multi-part rings composed of interlocking bands that formed a single circle when assembled. Picture this. During the engagement period, the couple would each wear one part of the ring. Then, during the wedding ceremony, these separate pieces would be joined together to form one complete ring, which the bride would wear. The symbolism was profound. Two separate lives literally joining into one harmonious whole, representing the sacred and binding nature of marriage. Medieval peasants, unable to afford precious metals, created circlets of rush, wood, or leather. They insisted upon having some sort of ring to seal their union, showing how deeply the symbolism had penetrated all levels of society. The material didn't matter. The meaning did. This period also saw the emergence of orange blossom rings, incorporating the symbolism of one of nature's most prolific fruits and Venus rings, harking back to the ancient goddess of love. Each design carried layers of meaning that spoke to medieval people's complex understanding of love, fertility, and divine blessing. Now, let's explore an aspect of wedding ring history that might surprise you: the darker symbolic meanings that coexisted alongside romance and devotion. Not all historical interpretations of the wedding ring were positive, and understanding these perspectives gives us a fuller picture of how marriage and gender roles have evolved. Some historians argue that the wedding ring developed from the circular fetters or bracelets placed upon captive women in primitive times. According to this theory, the ring became a symbolic relic, though an unconscious one, of women's ancient status of subjection and servitude to their masters. The language of traditional Christian marriage rituals reinforced these interpretations. The sacramental view of marriage emphasized permanent spiritual union, which inherently denoted the surrender of freedom. For centuries, women's marriage vows included the phrase "to obey," a clear note of subjugation to the husband's will. Even the choice of the left hand for wearing wedding rings carried connotations of servitude. From earliest times, the right hand symbolized power and authority, while the left hand represented subjection. Think about our language today. We still speak of someone being the right hand of authority, or describe something questionable as sinister, which literally means left in Latin. The exchanging of wedding rings symbolized loss of freedom, the ball and chain concept in another form. For men, it represented bondage. For women, subjugation. These weren't just abstract concepts. They reflected real legal and social realities where married women lost most of their independent rights upon marriage. But here's what's fascinating about human culture. The same symbol that represented constraint and control also represented love, commitment, and spiritual union. The wedding ring has always carried this duality, this tension between different interpretations of what marriage means and what roles spouses should play. The story of wedding rings is also the story of human craftsmanship, economic development, and technological advancement. The materials used for wedding rings throughout history tell us as much about societies as the ring's symbolism does. Let's start with iron, the original Roman choice. Iron wasn't selected for its beauty, but for its symbolic power. This metal represented strength, durability, and permanence. When Roman couples exchanged iron rings, they were declaring their love to be as strong and enduring as the metal itself. Iron was also practical. It was relatively inexpensive and accessible to ordinary citizens. As Roman society became more prosperous, gold gained popularity among the wealthy classes. Gold carried associations of purity, and its value indicated the wealth the husband brought to the marriage contract. The choice of gold wasn't just about status, it was about demonstrating the economic security that made marriage possible. Medieval societies used whatever materials they could afford. Besides various metals like silver, steel, and bronze, people crafted wedding rings from wood, rush, and leather. Each material carried its own symbolism and practical considerations. Wood rings might be carved with religious symbols or family emblems. Rush rings, woven in intricate patterns, demonstrated the maker's skill and devotion. The modern era brought platinum into extensive use for wedding rings. Platinum's rarity and durability made it perfect for symbolizing precious, enduring love. The 20th century also popularized diamond wedding bands, rings set with a row or circle of small diamonds, adding brilliance and value to the traditional band. These material choices weren't just aesthetic, they reflected economic conditions, technological capabilities, and cultural values of different eras. A medieval peasant's leather ring and a modern platinum band serve the same symbolic function, showing how powerful symbols can transcend material circumstances. As wedding ring traditions spread across different cultures, fascinating variations emerged that reflected local customs, religious beliefs, and social structures. These cultural adaptations show how a universal symbol can take on distinctly local meanings while maintaining its core significance. In ancient Ireland, men offered women bracelets intricately woven from their own hair. This wasn't just about creating beautiful jewelry, it was profoundly intimate. Hair was believed to contain part of a person's life force or soul. When a woman accepted such a bracelet, she was literally accepting part of her suitor's essence, creating a spiritual bond that was believed to connect their souls for life. Greek engagement rings, dating back to at least the 4th century BC, were often inscribed with words or symbols reflecting virtue, devotion, or intellectual admiration. These weren't just romantic gestures. They reflected Greek values that emphasized the mind and character as much as the heart. A ring might bear inscriptions celebrating wisdom, courage, or philosophical ideals. During the Elizabethan period in England, we see something that would shock modern sensibilities. Wedding rings were worn on the thumb. Portraits of ladies from that time clearly show this practice. The thumb, in Renaissance symbolism, was associated with Venus and considered sacred to love and fertility. Hebrew traditions permitted the use of gold, silver, or even modest base metals for ceremonial purposes, emphasizing that the ring's value lay in its symbolism rather than its material worth. This democratic approach to wedding rings reflected Jewish values about spiritual equality and the primacy of meaning over material display. By the 9th century, Christian customs had fully embraced the gold wedding ring as a formal representation of marriage, often with inscriptions of the couple's names to personalize the sacred bond. These rings were frequently inspected by clergy during ceremonies to ensure authenticity, showing how seriously the Church took this symbol of spiritual and legal unity. Throughout history, wedding ring designs have reflected changing artistic styles, technological capabilities, and cultural values. From simple bands to elaborate creations, each design innovation tells a story about the society that created it. The single unadorned band has been the most common form throughout history, but it's far from the only design. Medieval craftsmen created double rings joined by a pivot. These gimel rings could be worn together or separately, symbolizing the dual nature of marriage as both individual identity and shared unity. Renaissance jewelers developed rings set elaborately with gems, each stone carrying specific meanings. Sapphires represented faithfulness, rubies symbolized passion, and emeralds indicated rebirth and new beginnings. These weren't just decorative choices. They were symbolic languages that communicated complex messages about the couple's hopes and values. The puzzle rings mentioned earlier became increasingly sophisticated during the medieval and Renaissance periods. Some consisted of 6 or 8 interlocking bands that, when assembled correctly, formed an apparently indivisible ring. The complexity of these rings wasn't just showing off craftsmanship, it symbolized how two people's lives could become so intertwined that separating them would be nearly impossible. Fed rings, with their clasped hands motif, evolved into increasingly elaborate designs. Later versions included hearts held by the clasped hands, or crowns above the hands, creating the ancestor of the modern clatter ring. Each element added layers of meaning: hands for friendship, hearts for love, crowns for loyalty. The orange blossom ring brought natural symbolism into jewelry design, incorporating the imagery of one of nature's most prolific fruits to suggest fertility and abundance. These rings often featured delicate engravings of orange blossoms or leaves, connecting the marriage to natural cycles of growth and renewal. Let's dive deeper into the ancient astrological beliefs that shaped wedding ring traditions, because this aspect of ring lore reveals how our ancestors understood the connection between earthly love and cosmic forces. In late classical palmistry and astrology, each finger was assigned to a specific planetary deity, and these assignments weren't random. They reflected sophisticated understanding of human psychology and cosmic symbolism. The forefinger belonged to Jupiter, the oak god, representing wisdom, leadership, and benevolent authority. The middle finger was assigned to Saturn, associated with time, limitation, and the sobering realities of life, which is why it became known as the fool's finger, representing the wisdom that comes through hard experience. The fourth finger, our ring finger, belonged to Apollo, the sun god, who had become the patron of physicians and god of wisdom generally. This finger was also called the gold finger in German, reflecting its association with Apollo's sacred metal. Apollo ruled the heart as the seat of enduring love, making this finger the perfect location for rings that controlled and protected the heart's affections. The little finger belonged to Mercury in his aspect as conductor of dead souls, representing communication, transitions, and the connection between earthly and spiritual realms. Venus claimed the thumb as a phallic emblem, while Mars ruled the center of the palm where weapons were gripped. This wasn't just abstract symbolism, it reflected a worldview where human anatomy was understood as a microcosm of cosmic forces. When you placed a gold wedding ring on the Apollo finger, you were invoking the sun god's protection over your heart and your love, connecting your personal relationship to universal harmonies. Ancient physicians took this so seriously that they mixed their medicaments and potions with the ring finger, believing that its direct connection to the heart would ensure the medicine's effectiveness. The fourth finger wasn't just the ring finger, it was the physic finger, the healing finger, the finger through which life force flowed most directly. One of the most fascinating aspects of ring history is how these circular bands evolved from purely functional objects into symbols of the deepest human emotions and commitments. The signet ring tradition reveals how practical necessity shaped romantic customs. In ancient Greece and Rome, signet rings were essential tools of daily life. These rings bore engraved personal seals used to stamp clay or wax on documents, containers, and valuables. Your signet ring was your signature, your identity, your authority made portable and permanent. The materials used for signet rings reflected both status and function. Gold and silver signets belonged to the wealthy and powerful, while iron, ivory, and amber rings served middle-class citizens. In Sparta, the emphasis on discipline and simplicity meant citizens could wear only iron rings, a rule that reinforced Spartan values of austerity and rejection of luxury. But here's where it gets romantic. When a man gave his signet ring to a woman, or had a duplicate made for her, he was granting her unprecedented trust and authority. In households where locks and keys were uncommon, a wife wearing her husband's signet could manage affairs, protect valuables, and make decisions in his name. This wasn't just symbolic, it was revolutionary. In societies where women often had limited legal rights, the signet ring granted practical authority and responsibility. It represented a partnership model of marriage that was far ahead of its time. The transition from signet rings to wedding rings shows how functional objects can evolve into emotional symbols. The same qualities that made signet rings practical, their uniqueness, their connection to identity, their role in securing valuable things, made them perfect symbols for securing the most valuable thing of all, love itself. Let's explore one of the most captivating origin myths of the wedding ring, the story of Prometheus and the first ring ever worn by a human being. This tale, passed down through generations of storytellers, reveals how ancient people understood the connection between love, sacrifice, and eternal commitment. According to Greek mythology, Prometheus was the titan who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity. This wasn't just about providing warmth and light. Fire represented knowledge, civilization, and the divine spark that separated humans from beasts. Prometheus's gift made human culture possible. But Zeus, king of the gods, was furious about this theft. As punishment, he ordered Prometheus to be chained to the frozen peaks of the Caucasus, where an eagle would feed on his liver every day for 30,000 years. Because Prometheus was immortal, his liver would regenerate each night, only to be torn apart again the next day. Eventually, Zeus relented and allowed Prometheus to be freed. But to ensure that his oath wasn't violated, he commanded that Prometheus should always wear upon his finger a link from his chain, an iron ring, to which should be attached a small piece of the rock from Caucasus. So according to this myth, the very first ring was born from love, Prometheus's love for humanity, and sacrifice. It was forged from the chains that bound him, incorporating the stone of his suffering. Every ring worn afterward carried this legacy of love that accepts sacrifice, commitment that endures suffering, and bonds that cannot be broken even by divine punishment. This mythological origin gave ancient couples a powerful framework for understanding their own rings. Like Prometheus, they were accepting chains, but chains chosen willingly, chains that connected them not to punishment, but to love. Chains that symbolized their willingness to sacrifice individual freedom for shared commitment. As we close this journey through the history of wedding rings, think about this. How did a simple circle of metal come to hold the weight of eternity? From Egyptian hieroglyphs to Roman vows, from medieval puzzle rings to modern love stories, this small band has survived empires, revolutions, and even the changing meaning of marriage itself. Yet its message remains timeless. Two people choosing to make one promise that lasts. Next time you see a wedding ring, look closer. Behind that gold lies thousands of years of devotion, rebellion, and belief in forever. But what if the ring's true origin wasn't love, but power? Download the Skoob app now to hear the full story and uncover the hidden history behind the world's most enduring symbol of commitment.